You may want to make that announcement to sign up.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Trustees special meeting, December the 18th, 2023 at Village Hall. I'm Mayor Donald T. Lopez. If you wish to speak or comment on the item of business on the agenda, please sign up prior to the meeting commencing. The sign-up sheet is located at the entrance. I'm calling the meeting to order. The time is 5 p.m. This meeting is streamed on the village website and with any application, digital service or software, the opportunity for failure can occur. Therefore, the village is not responsible for the inability to connect to the meeting by viewing via live stream. The meeting video and audio is recorded and will be available online after the meeting on the village website. At this time, I'm going to call the roll. Mayor Pro Tem Trustee Pacheco.
Here.
Trustee Benavides.
Here.
Trustee Radnovich.
Here.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve or amend the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. There is one item on the agenda, new business, 4A. Discussion and approval of resolution number 2023-12-05, a resolution designating a village representative to communicate to and with the village's legal counsel, the Village of Los Ranchos de Albuquerque's position and direction in outstanding and potential litigation involving the Friends of Los Ranchos, and Mr. Joe Craig recommending retention of special litigation counsel for such litigation. Attorney Nan Winter.
Are we not going to have the pledge?
We'll have the pledge right now. Please stand and let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Attorney Nan Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to provide some context for how we got this resolution on the agenda today. On November 8th, the day after your municipal election, I received a call from Mr. Matt Beck, representing Joe Craig. Mr. Beck felt that it was vitally important that he speak with me that day. He sent me an email to that effect. We did have a chance to speak on that day. And in that conversation, Mr. Beck explained that it was imperative that Stelzner immediately meet with Mr. Craig to quote unquote protect the interests of the village. Mr. Beck went on to say that because this expediency was necessary, because on January 1st of 2024, after Mr. Craig takes office, the village will be pleading mea culpa, those were his exact words, to each of the allegations in the Open Meetings Act suit, in the writ action, in the anti-donation clause action, in the 2022 declaratory judgment action, and in the appeal that is currently pending in district court. I thought it odd that he used the word mea culpa. That is a Latin term usually used by criminal lawyers, and Mr. Beck is a criminal lawyer. It translates to plead guilty. Mr. Beck then went on to indicate that the Stelzner firm had an ethical duty to meet with Mr. Craig to, quote unquote, again, protect the village from these admissions that Mr. Craig plans on making on January 1st of 2024. Of course, the conversation triggered multiple conversations, research related to conflicts of interest, looking at the Governmental Conduct Act. And even though this conversation was not memorialized in any sort of written correspondence, on November 10th, 2 days later, Mr. Beck filed a pleading with the district court. And in the district court, he essentially indicated pretty much everything he told me over the phone. In particular, in this pleading with the court, now a public record, Mr. Beck indicated that Mr. Craig will be the future chief administrator of the village and its litigation strategy in this matter in less than 60 days. Those are quotes. Mr. Beck further indicated in quotes, Mr. Craig has less than 60 days to prepare and take over the chief administrator role of the village, a local municipality going through a huge transition and a slate of lawsuits related to the Village Center project, close quote. Mr. Beck went on to say, quote, Mr. Craig has been elected mayor of the village. The defendant in this matter, who is insisting on taking his deposition a week after the election, and with less than 60 days until Mr. Craig takes over the municipality and takes over the direction of this litigation, close quote. The last thing the pleading indicated to the court was, quote, the current mayor lost to Mr. Craig in his bid for re-election, comma, and there exists a lame duck board of trustees, comma, with 2 of the remaining 3 trustees out on January 1, and the 2 incoming trustees aligned with Mr. Craig, having run on the same platform and promised to enforce state law and village ordinances on the Village Center project, close quote. If it wasn't apparent to me on November 8th that Mr. Craig intended to run both sides of the litigation, that is, be both the plaintiff and the defendant in this case, it became crystal clear when Mr. Beck filed that pleading with the court saying that he would, in essence, be running the litigation. And oh, by the way, I own 2 of the future trustees who are aligned with me. This caused Stelzner to pull together these documents, emails evincing these conversations, the pleadings with the court, and it caused Stelzner to then seek an opinion with the State Ethics Commission. So 10 days after the election, we filed a request to the State Ethics Commission seeking an informal advisory opinion. We can request an informal advisory opinion in accordance with NMSA 10-16-2I. The informal advisory opinion essentially laid out exactly what I just laid out to you, attached the documents, and requested several questions be answered. The first question that we asked be answered, and I'll read it to you, is 1, the Stelzner firm seeks an informal advisory opinion on the following. 1, an opinion as to whether there exists an actual or apparent conflict of interest as it concerns Mayor-elect Joe Craig, if as mayor, he is in charge of litigation strategy for the pending legal cases in which he is involved, both personally and as president of FOLR, Friends of Los Ranchos. 2, we seek your opinion as to the duty of the current governing body as officials subject to the Governmental Conduct Act. In other words, we were concerned that you also have an obligation here. The mayor-elect has his own obligations, but we were more concerned that this body had a duty to act. So we asked for an opinion as to the duty of the current governing body as officials subject to the Governmental Conduct Act to, 1, can and should the governing body act to screen mayor-elect, that is, appoint another governing body member with no interest in the litigation to be the point of contact on litigation matters. 2, can and should the governing body appoint separate defense counsel independent of Mr. Craig and his surrogate appointees to advise and defend the village in the pending litigation initiated by Friends of Los Ranchos and Mr. Craig. 3, has this governing body violated any provision of the Governmental Conduct Act should it fail to take the actions indicated above? And 4, can and should this governing body take any other action authorized under the Governmental Conduct Act? So it became clear to us that not only were Governmental Conduct Act implications raised as it concerns the future governing body, we wanted to make sure this governing body crossed its T's and dotted its I's. As you know, and has been handed out, the State Ethics Commission responded on December 12th of 2023. This is now a public document. The State Ethics Commission answer to our question number 1, and our question number 1 again was an opinion as to whether there exists an actual apparent conflict of interest as it concerns Mayor-elect Joe Craig. In the Ethics Commission opinion, answering number 1 indicated and cited 4 different provisions of the Governmental Conduct Act. The first provision they detailed was subsection 1016(3)A. And in it, they indicate that that prohibits Mr. Craig from using the powers and resources of his office to financially benefit himself or Friends of Los Ranchos, the nonprofit for which he is president of the board. Section 10-16-3C requires Mr. Craig to disclose his actual or potential conflict of interest in this lawsuit and those of the Friends of Los Ranchos, and will prohibit Mr. Craig from abusing his office by engaging in conduct that violates his fiduciary duties to the public. The legal opinion went on to cite subsection 10-16-4A and B and indicate that it will prohibit and disqualify Mr. Craig from taking official acts in the Open Meetings Act lawsuit because he holds a financial interest in that case. It went on to caveat that with, because Friends of Los Ranchos is a nonprofit organization, however, Mr. Craig does not hold a financial interest in his role as president of FOLR. Caveating that again, the opinion indicated that section 10-16-6 will nevertheless prohibit Mr. Craig from disclosing or using any confidential information he acquires as mayor for his or the Friends of Los Ranchos private gain. We read that last provision to indicate that he cannot sit across the desk of staff and seek information that he then discloses to other parties that would benefit the parties that he intends to substitute in his name down the road. As it concerns our questions and your role as a sitting governing body and your duties to either screen, appoint separate defense counsel, and whether or not you have violated any provisions of the Governmental Conduct Act, the Ethics Commission had this to say. The Governmental Conduct Act does not mandate specific actions the governing body must take if Mr. Craig is disqualified or recuses from a specific matter, although it would be prudent for the governing body to take reasonable measures to ensure those public officers who have recused or are disqualified from a matter do not participate in those matters on behalf of the village. The commission went on to say that the Governmental Conduct Act does not require members of the governing body to appoint separate defense counsel, but to the extent public employees recuse or are disqualified from participation in matter, that would extend to discussions and counsel from the governing body's attorney. As it concerns questions about whether or not this body has violated any provision of the governmental conduct, the answer was, if a public official subject to the Governmental Conduct Act fails to comply with the obligations set forth in the Act, the public official is subject to criminal and civil penalties. They last said that the governing body of the village may refer a violation of the Act to the State Ethics Commission or the sitting district attorney. Now, I also, in my timeline, neglected to mention that this village is in the process of retaining a substitute general counsel, Mr. Bill Chappell. Mr. Bill Chappell's correspondence was discussed in our last board meeting. In that correspondence, Mr. Chappell indicated that he would only be acting as general counsel. He would not be doing any litigation. And he recommended, or I think he was more than a recommendation, he strongly suggested that there be independent counsel relative to the Friends of Los Ranchos, Joe Craig versus village litigations. We are also in receipt earlier this morning of correspondence from Mr. Joe Craig indicating that he'd like certain documents made a part of the record. I think so long as those documents have been delivered to the village, they are now public record. Right. There is no record. This is not a hearing. This is not an evidentiary hearing. As long as they've been tendered to the village, they're a public record. In it, I haven't read all of it, but Mr. Craig also did forward a transfer of all and any interest agreement between him and a Miss Nancy R. Nangeroni. And in it, he purports to assign his interest in the litigation, the Open Meetings Act litigation, to Miss Nangeroni. The caption on the case is nevertheless still Joe Craig versus Village of Los Ranchos. So you can say, I'm going to promise to transfer this to somebody, but until the court acts, the case is still Craig versus Village. Now, the document itself is proof that in fact there has been no transfer of plaintiff. The plaintiff is still Joe Craig. And it is, now that other parties have entered their appearance in these cases, it's not a given that plaintiff Joe Craig will be able to offload his obligations under that litigation to a third party, Miss Nangeroni. My guess is there could be opposition from Palindrome to that. There could be opposition from the mayor's council on that. I would also like to point out, if you have read the transfer of all and any interest agreement, I'm hoping that Ms. Nangeroni had advice of counsel when she signed this, because not only are there attorney's fees due to the attorney that's prosecuting this, if Mr. Craig or Ms. Nangeroni, if that comes to pass, loses that litigation, they owe the village its attorney's fees and costs. If in fact there is a substitution from Mr. Craig to Ms. Nangeroni will also have to answer discovery, sit for deposition, and participate as any other litigant would in the litigation. Again, because the caption is still what it is, because they're indicating in this agreement that there will be a future motion, that to me is an admission that this case still is Joe Craig versus Village of Los Ranchos, and it will stay that way for months, potentially until the court acts. It could be 6 months. I mean, we've been briefing and talking pretty much about this litigation, and you understand that the courts are taking quite a bit of time to act on motions. Nevertheless, nothing that was received from Mr. Craig this morning changes anything that I have to say to you about what this resolution does. And unless you have questions, I'm going to turn to the resolution.
Thank you very much. Do you have any more to say right now before I ask for the motion?
No.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve resolution number 2023-12-05. It's right there.
Thank you. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2023-12-05.
I need a second.
I will second that.
Okay, before we get to discussion from the governing body, I'm going to call up the individuals who signed up prior, listed on the sheet. So at this time, I would ask Mr. Joe Craig to come forward, state your name and address. For the record, you have 2 minutes. Please come forward. Mayor-elect Joe Craig.
Mayor, Trustees, Joe Craig, 505 Calle del Pajarito Northwest. 2 minutes is not enough, Mayor. I have a substantial charge that you are trying to
How much time
levy.
do you need, sir?
3 minutes?
You got it.
Okay. Dear Mayor and Trustees, I saw on the agenda for this evening a proposed resolution, 2023-12-05. I want to draw your attention to several incorrect factual assumptions on which this resolution is based. and in which, in addition to being factually incorrect, makes it unnecessary. The second whereas clause is incorrect. I am presently not involved in any litigation against the village trustees or the mayor. This lawsuit references the lawsuit that was filed in my name against the village of Los Ranchos to redress the village violations of the Open Meeting Act, when it delegated and purportedly approved the Village Center project. After I was elected mayor, I realized a lawsuit against the village creates a conflict of interest. I therefore sought out someone who was willing and able to receive all of my interest in the lawsuit and substitute me for a plaintiff in that case. As the first attachment to this email demonstrates, on November 29th, 2023, Nancy Nangeroni agreed to the transfer of all of my interest in the lawsuit to her. So Nancy Nangeroni, and not me, is presently in litigation with the village and other defendants in the lawsuit, whereas the second whereas clause references. The third whereas clause is also incorrect. As the second attachment to the email demonstrates in the letter that I sent to the board of Friends of Los Ranchos, I resigned as president of Friends on November 30th. I no longer have any association with Friends. The fourth whereas clause is also incorrect. As I expect the village attorney who drafted this to know, the lawsuit referenced in this paragraph, clause D202 CV 2022-07543, was an appeal of the village's approval of Chavez Guadalupe's application under the Conservation Development Pilot Project. The district court affirmed the village trustees' decision on October 12, 2023. An appeal from that affirmance would have had to been filed in November. Friends did not appeal, nor did anyone else. So the clause is incorrect. This lawsuit is still subject to continuing village reviews and approvals. The 12th whereas clause is also incorrect. I transferred any and all interest I had in the Open Meetings Act case to Nancy Nangeroni on November 29th, 2023. I am no longer on either side of the litigation in that case. I resigned as president and terminated any affiliation or association I had with Friends on November 30th, 2023. So I am no longer on any side of lawsuit that Friends has against the village. Thus, once I take office, I will not be serving on both sides of the litigation. I will serve only the interest of the village, the residents of which elected me to do so. Aside from the inaccuracy in the resolution, I'd like to address the designation of Gil Benavides to serve as the village designee for a village attorney. Unlike
The speaker's time has expired.
You can continue.
Thank you.
You can continue,
Thank you.
Mr. Elect, please.
Thank you. Unlike Mr. Benavides, I hold no ill will towards him as a result of the election. I ran for the purpose of redressing the village's unlawful actions in relation to the Village Center project. Gil, on the other hand, ran on the premise that he was the only candidate who had no attachment to the project. That's true. And that's why he's particularly unfit to be the village designee. Gil already had the opportunity to take the correct position on behalf of the village in the litigation against the Village Center project. He had the opportunity to vote to affirm the Planning and Zoning Commission reversal of the illegal approval of the project. But he didn't. He abstained because, and I quote, that this is something that is going to go before district court. So he wanted to defer the appeal until after the settlement of the lawsuits in district court. Gil abstained on the most important issue before the village because he didn't want to take a position until district court decided the case. How can someone who doesn't want to take a position and let the court decide the issues advocate the village's position to the court? As I said, I respect Gil. I obviously appreciate the dedication that it takes to be willing to give up your personal time and run for mayor and to make the commitment to villagers to be their mayor. But I do not respect that he abstained from the most important decision that the village has had to pass on in recent memory because he didn't want to advocate a position. I don't respect that the resolution now wants to designate him as a sole person to advocate a position to the court on the village's behalf. Finally, I'd like to address the resolution's recommendation. The State Ethics Commission letter that references was never provided to me by whomever the letter was addressed to, but it confirms that the steps I took weeks before it was ever authored were correct and dispel any real or potential conflicts of interest that might arise from the litigation against the village by Friends and Ms. Nagaroni. Because I have no interest in the Open Meetings Act litigation, I have no connection to Friends, I cannot financially benefit myself, and I have no interest in any financial benefit to the Friends of Los Ranchos because I am not president of the board. Indeed, I have no affiliation with the organization. See, 11th, whereas the State Ethics Commission therefore confirms that I don't need to, nor should I recuse myself from any discussion or decision involving any litigation between the Friends. And it confirms that I don't need to, nor should I recuse myself from any discussion or decision involving litigation and Ms. Nagaroni. I have no interest, financial or otherwise, in Ms. Nagaroni's lawsuit. As mayor, I will take an oath to uphold the village ordinances, state laws, and New Mexico and United States Constitution. I take that oath seriously. As I committed to on the campaign trail, I will do what the village residents' best interest is as mayor. And if that means the village should retain special litigation counsel, then I will advocate for the retention of that special counsel. But the factual inaccuracies of the proposed resolution number 2023-12-05 confirm that it's premature for that decision to be made today. I respectfully request that this letter and the attachments to it be made part of the hearing packet for tonight's special meeting.
They are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tom Donnellan, please come forward. State your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes. I'm going to make sure everybody adheres to the 2 minutes from now on. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, trustees. My name is Tom Donnellan. I reside at 6668 Edgewood Drive, Northwest, Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. All of this speaks to doing things not as a community, but as people going into their fears of what's going to happen, what may happen, what's possible to happen, as opposed to actually sitting down and talking and coming to a resolution as to what's possible. I have talked to and asked whether people have actually presented and talked to Mayor-elect Craig and had a conversation as to whether what to do given the information they had. I've heard that at that point that it hadn't happened. So to me, that's really disturbing that the first way to try to deal with this issue is trying to do legal and based on best guesses as to what the situation is, which obviously now are in the process of changing already. So once again, it feels like that the board is being pushed into making a very snap decision without knowing all of the issues, knowing all of the facts. And in doing that, you've already seen that we've made snap decisions that weren't good decisions. I really urge you not to vote on this tonight, to take the time to re-examine what the issues are. Take the time to have a conversation with the people that we, the residents, have elected and said we want leading you. Please, thank you.
Marcia Adams, please come forward. State your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I just wanted to introduce myself as the new president of Friends of Los Ranchos. And I want to echo Tom's words about community and working together. We all need to come together. We're all residents. We all have best interests at heart and want to see us go forward rather than get bogged down with this. Thank you.
Ms. Adams, before you leave the podium, please state your address.
1008 Acequia Trail.
David Montoya. State your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
I might need more than 2 minutes.
I'm not going to give it to you.
All right, I drove 3 hours to be here.
I understand.
At 5 o'clock. And I'm at 8831 4th Street. And the problem here is I want to tell everyone here, I did not vote for Joe Craig. But I'm here fighting for him because this is wrong. And we know it's wrong. And the main problem is we did not have a transition meeting. If we had a transition, if we had a transition, there would not be this fear because you would speak to one another. This action that you're attempting to make is divisive. And I ask you, Gilbert, to not take this on at the very least, to send it to another person or defer. Sandra, I voted for you. The community has voted for you and we trust you. And we know that we can trust Joe Craig because the ethics board has given very clear guidelines as what to do. He's not going to willingly break the law and come up on ethics charges. You must, we must, even though I didn't vote for Joe, I gotta trust Joe. I'm asking you to trust them. He will follow these guidelines. They're guardrails. They're gonna keep him in line. If you have Gilbert sitting right next to the mayor for 2 years at least, look what we're doing. We're dividing a community that should be together. We need to heal the wounds. And I ask you, George, to consider the same thing. Please defer this. Trust the new board to come in. They're wise people. And more than 1,000 people agree with that because otherwise they would not have voted for him. But I have voted for every one of you and so have others. So please reconsider and don't divide this community. A divided community will not stand.
Thank you. Drew Tagliapietra, please come forward, state your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Everything's been said, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, this name is hard to read. Ron Darnell, is there somebody out there with that name?
Yes, but everything I want to say.
Okay, Hank Kelly, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Mayor, trustees, Hank Kelly, 6900 Rio Grande Boulevard, Northwest. I am a lawyer. I spent 10 years as chairman and member of the State Bar, State Supreme Court's Ethics Committee. I think I know what I'm talking about. Ms. Winter, I have some questions for you. You as counsel for the village in these cases would not visit with Mr. Craig, would you, were he in the position, as you have stated he might be, if in that case, come January 1st, you were faced with having to advise him about confidential matters concerning these cases, you wouldn't do so, would you? No, you wouldn't, because ethically you're bound not to. What you're doing is you're anticipating matters that haven't occurred, and you are imposing a burden on your new administration that may not need to be imposed. Council is sitting there supporting you and supporting the proper administration of justice. And it's her obligation to make these kinds of things available to you at the time. This is nothing more than a divisive, unfortunate scheme to set aside and harm a new administration. That's all it will effectively do. You should rely on legal counsel to say what is happening is okay, or what is being proposed is not okay. But doing this now is inappropriate, unfortunate, and I think it does disservice to us who voted. I did not vote for Joe Craig, but he is my mayor. I also voted for or against the other two candidates who will be elected. Do you not trust them with counsel to make the appropriate decisions at the time and to protect the village against any conceivable, inappropriate conflict of interest that may arise?
The speaker's time has expired.
Thank you.
Nancy Mangiaroni, please come forward. State your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Nancy Mangiaroni, 7315 Guadalupe Trail. Thank you for your time and attention. Let's see. I don't know why there's so much distrust for the incoming administration. Perhaps the lawsuit is where that all comes from. Let me clarify some things about the lawsuit. Number one, the lawsuit was initially filed by the Friends of Los Ranchos. It was put into Joe Craig's name because then we could possibly recover our expenses, our legal expenses, and give them back to the over 600, to the hundreds of people in this village who donated to make that lawsuit happen, okay? It wasn't Joe Craig by himself. Secondly, I have a lawyer. His name is Matt Beck, okay? I signed a legal document transferring the interest to me. I am now the primary litigant, okay? So I will listen to Joe because I think he's a decent guy and I respect his opinion, but I'll be making the decisions from here on in, okay? I will not be intimidated by threats of financial hardship or losses on my part. I will not be intimidated, okay? But I'm also tired of feeding billable hours to all these attorneys. And I will do my best, I can promise you now, to wrap up these legal affairs just as soon as we possibly can. And perhaps with an administration that is open to talking about these things, perhaps we can put them all to bed in a speedy fashion and stop draining our village's coffers, because that's all we're doing on both sides. To the extent that we continue legal actions, we are just taking money from our village and we're fighting each other in a pointless
The speaker's time
fight.
has expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gordine McKenzie, are you here? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Gordine McKenzie, 7315 Guadalupe Trail, Northwest. Most people have mentioned what I already wanted to say. Why didn't you ask Joe? Why didn't you call him up? Why didn't you talk to him? Why didn't you think about transferring power? What's happening is nothing more than a witch hunt. And there is a thin line between the legal representation and being an advocate. And I would like you to think about that and consider that. And also, we need, as other people have said, to unite and to stop being divided. We have to work together. All of you were elected to represent the residents. And that's something very important to remember. And that's why Joe was elected by so many residents, because they had discontent, because the ordinances weren't being followed. The Open Meeting Act was violated, and that brought residents together. It was not just Joe Craig. There was a whole room full of people, a grassroots organization, 600, 700 people that signed petitions that wanted change, that we brought before you but it fell largely on deaf ears, and residents weren't heard. And that's why the election turned out like it did, because residents felt heard. And I ask you to consider what the residents want. You were elected to represent us, not yourselves. Thank you.
Michael Bayer, are you here? Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 2 minutes.
Michael Bryce.
Bryce, sorry.
6610 Las Casitas Court, Northwest. And I have 2 minutes, so hopefully I can do what Joe Montana used to do in 2 minutes.
Yes.
I'm going to start off with the main thing. The fact is that council has reference to the fact that this matter could be referred to the district attorney or to the organization who heard the State Ethics Commission. So that could happen. But what the council has not told you, and the papers that were submitted on your behalf have not told you, is the following. While the village does not have authority to enforce the provisions of the governmental conduct if a member of the governing body or the mayor violates the Governmental Conduct Act, the village may refer the matter to the State Ethics Commission or a district attorney. I say that again. While the village does not have the authority to enforce the provisions of the Governmental Conduct Act, if a member of the governing body or the mayor violates the Governmental Conduct Act, the village may refer the matter to the State Ethics Commission or a district attorney. Now, I think based on that, you can understand why somebody might not have put that into your papers or into other things that have been submitted. It's not only that, it's that the advisory opinion went forward after a complaint. The complaint was made, and the requirement was that 5 days later, that complaint had to be given to the mayor-elect. It never was.
The speaker's time has expired.
Give him a little more time, please, Mayor.
How much more time do you need, sir? There's only one person after you. How much more time do you need?
I'll tell you what, I'll sit down and then if the person can come up, I'll come up at the end. How about that?
No.
Okay.
How much time do you need, sir?
I need probably about 2.5 more minutes.
Go right ahead.
Okay.
I'm not going to stop you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speak into the mic, please.
Okay. It seems likely that neither the State Ethics Commission nor the District Attorney's Office would take lightly to such an encroachment on their legal jurisdiction, especially where the board has no authority to do so. Now, you must remember that the only law that was put forward regarding this situation was this statute. And there was nothing from legislature, there's nothing from case law, there's nothing from the Constitution. There's nothing that calls for this and supports it. Only this statute is what was used to start this all down the road to have a co-mayor, which again, I haven't found any place in the United States that has a co-mayor such as that. So I will close before the end of my 2.5 minutes, but the fact remains that going forward, it does not seem wise to do this tonight if you don't have jurisdiction.
Trustee-elect Frank Raynow, are you here?
It's been said.
Thank you.
Can I
No, no more public comment. That's it. That's it.
3 hours, Mayor, to be here.
I'm sorry, I understand, but there's no more public comment. Okay, the floor, I'm sorry, I'm not going to close the record. We now go to discussion from the governing body. We're going to go trustee by trustee. Trustee Pacheco.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear a lot about, you know, the code of ethics that we all agree to when we take public office. And I don't know why anybody here would think that we all have not done that. We all did that. We all care about this community because we're here and because we've been here. So I keep hearing that, and it just amazes me that people would think that we don't care about this community and kind of the things that are happening here as we do. What I would like to know, and I think what I'd like to ask Attorney Winter is, and again, we talk about cost to the community and what it's going to cost the village, you know, for all of this to happen. And I guess I would just like to ask the attorney if she could please just share with us what this could look like in terms of cost to this village.
Mayor, trustee, I assume what you're asking me is, given Mr. Beck's indication that Mr. Craig would be pleading mea culpa to all the allegations.
That is correct.
Okay, what it would cost the village. And that is exactly what got my attention and motivated me to, you know, query the Ethics Commission. This is a $58 million project. The parties are Bernalillo County, Mortgage Finance Authority, investors. Mr. Reniker has a certain amount of that is invested as his own money, I believe about $8 million. If the village were to plead guilty to violations of the Open Meetings Act, it would probably be considered a breach of the development agreement on a $58 million project. Pleading guilty to violations of the anti-donation clause will likely result in even more litigation because the anti-donation clause is an allegation that something was given without compensation. So more litigation. And who knows what the result of that would be. As it concerns admissions to violations of the Open Meetings Act, I mean, we feel that there's a better than 80% chance the village wins that. The other side suffers damages if that happens. But again, if you plead guilty to complaints that have been filed in district court on open meetings, anti-donation, or violations of village ordinance, all of that is going to be deemed a breach of the development agreement, which is going to subject the village to damages from Palindrome, potentially the county, investors, Mortgage Finance Authority. Again, I can tell you it's a $58 million project. There's also countersuits that could result from pleading guilty and breaching that contract. The countersuits that we are aware of include violations of civil rights by the village, violations of other village ordinances, inverse condemnation, a taking, condemnation. Again, this is a $58 million project. The last bit of damage that you could suffer besides these multiple litigations, the dollar value of the project, you could likely lose the back end of this development. In other words, this is only the first half of this project. There's, you know, the question remains, if the developer is subject to all of this, are they interested in pursuing the grocery store, the hotel, the retail? So the damages are not only dollars, It's the back half of the project and opening up to additional litigation. Now, having said that, when counsel for Mr. Craig calls me and says, we're gonna plead mea culpa, I have to take that seriously. When that allegation shows up in a court pleading 2 days later saying he now controls both sides of the litigation, I have to take that seriously. And that's what we did. And you were notified the moment it happened. So did I answer your question?
You did, and I thank you for that. I mean, I feel like I can't leave my position as trustee without a concern for what the State Ethics Commission has written. And I don't know, Mayor, if it's appropriate to read through the entire State Ethics Commission opinion.
I don't think it is.
I think it would be good for the record. I think it's good for everybody to hear.
It's already on the record.
But would it be okay if we just had that?
Everybody has read it. Everybody has seen it. I don't see a need to read it again. I don't. It's on the record. It's there.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I mean, I just wanted to share my thoughts and concerns with what the State Ethics Commission has, put in black and white for us. And I don't want to leave my place up here not taking care of, what we did and how we're moving forward. I think that's all I had to say for now, Mayor.
Trustee Benavides.
Okay, so Attorney Nan Winter, so what I hear in summary, pleading guilty does not make the lawsuits go away. Right?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, no. Pleading guilty probably invites another lawsuit from Palindrome for breaching the agreement on a $58 million project. That's our assessment of it.
So I want people to know I get accused of not listening quite often lately. Listening does not necessarily mean agreeing. Sometimes I agree with you. However, I agree with you on one level, but I disagree with you on a different level. We have these annoying things called village code and ordinances and laws that get in our way. So I do listen, but I'm reminded of when I was a young engineer at Sandia Labs, having some ideas and going into talking to the manager about this, and the manager would nod his head. And I'm thinking, this guy's agreeing with everything I'm saying. It was not the case. All he was indicating is that he heard me, and he totally disagreed with me. So let's see. I am here to represent both you and also there's the other part that gets omitted. I'm here to protect the village as an institution, okay? And so right now you're really hung up on this resolution, okay? If your focus is on the resolution, you're missing the big picture. So there are things that you know, and there are things that you don't know. What we heard from Mayor-elect Joe Craig today was already anticipated. It's already been anticipated that this thing will be repealed. All it is a moment in time is saying we have confidence in me as being a neutral party. And as you heard Joe Craig indicate, I abstained. That's the definition of neutrality, right? I didn't take a position because it belongs in district court. So what do you call someone that does things that takes on a task that's of no benefit to that individual? In fact, it could even be to the detriment of that individual, but does it for the good of others. You call that person selfless, okay? And I get it. I am being very selfless right now, and you may disagree, but you don't know everything. That's the problem. You have to. I'm asking you to trust me, and I know this will be discussed and probably repealed in another month or a month and a half, who knows? But it's just a declaration out of a moment in time that you should be aware of, okay? So we heard an opinion from Attorney Chappelle, and it wasn't our administration that contacted Attorney Chappelle. Is that the case, Attorney Nan Winter?
Mr. Mayor, Trustee Benavides, I believe Mr. Chappell reached out to, at the request of Mr. Craig, Mr. Chappell reached out to Joshua.
And did you plant a bug in his ear to say anything that he said?
Mayor, Trustee Benavides, I have not talked to Mr. Chappell.
Okay. I mean, because he brings up some pretty good points. You should read what he had to say. So this is not us saying this. This is other people saying this, and this is, I'm just asking you to trust me for now, okay? And if you focus on the resolution, you're missing the big picture.
We're asking you to trust us.
You don't have the information that I have, and neither does George. He was not at the closed session.
Thank you very much. Thanks. No. Thank you very much. Trustee Radnovich, it's your turn.
Ouch. I'm glad that Trustee Pacheco said you'd like to have a discussion, because I think this warrants a discussion. I understand, and I, as the mayor and Gil will tell you, I had no say or play in this resolution. It just came to me like it came to everyone. But I think when a mayoral candidate and then the mayor sends around printed documents that say, and I don't remember it, I have a copy of it at home, it came to my house, that say, I'm gonna tear that project down. And that administration knows that, and this came from Joe's campaign, this administration knows that that could happen, that as mayor, Joe, you could try to tear it down. That raises a lot of red flags for a village that is trying to protect itself. I wish I could ask you, are you planning to tear that down? Because I see that as being almost it's almost like a threat. And I'm no lawyer, as you know, but I think this is, in a way, this resolution is in a way baited by your statements, some of which were written. I do have questions for you, Nan, and I think something that Joe said was that he has no financial ties anymore. Now, I know you said that until it becomes like adjudicated at court, that he still does, and I believe that. I think you're right. I'm no lawyer, but I think you're right. Another lawyer in the audience may not think that, but is there any other is it just financial, or are there other parts of that I'm not, like I said, I have a hard time with legal documents, but is there more than just financial interest associated with this case?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, yes. And until the court acts, we don't know. I mean, right now, Mr. Craig is the plaintiff. We don't know if the court will act on it. We don't know if he'll ever make a motion for it to be substituted. We don't know if it will be granted. We don't know if somebody would oppose that. So until that point in time, it's Joe Craig versus the village. So yes, there's a financial interest. But the commission was clear that it's not just a financial interest. That's not the only thing that counts here. He is also obligated to disclose his actual and potential conflict of interest in his lawsuit, and that will potentially prohibit Mr. Craig from abusing his office by engaging in conduct that violates his fiduciary duty. The commission also pointed out that section 10-16-6 will prohibit Mr. Craig from disclosing or using any confidential information he acquires as mayor. And this is in part, not only was Mr. Beck's communications troublesome to me, and then the court filings troublesome, but staff at the village came to me and said, what if he comes and sits across from my desks and wants all my emails? That was, in fact, again, those things collectively is what made me run to the Ethics Commission on this. This prohibits him from sitting across somebody's desk and saying, hand me your emails on this particular project. So it's not just his financial interest. He cannot acquire or use any confidential information. And then as Trustee Benavides pointed out, he has a duty to the village. He has a fiduciary duty, as Trustee Benavides pointed out, that he has a fiduciary, not just to the folks sitting back here, but to this corporate entity. So does Mr. Craig. And that is also embodied in the Governmental Conduct Act. So what his or those future, what those violations might look like in the future, I don't know. That's a true statement. What we do know is that he said, I'm going to tear it down. He said, we're going to plead guilty to violations of dozens of ordinances, state laws, and he says he controls both sides of the litigation in a filed court document. That doesn't sound like, that it raises an issue as to whether or not there is whether he's going to adhere to a fiduciary duty or not.
Thank you. And this resolution and all of the other paperwork that I was just given tonight to go over is for both Palindrome and the Chavez Guadalupe LLC, correct?
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, yes, it includes both. It of course identifies all the Friends of Los Ranchos and Craig litigation regarding the Palindrome projects, but there's also a substantial body of material out there, including public comment made at last week's meeting, where two officials that will be in office on January 1 publicly spoke against a project that will eventually be in front of them. And I think you heard Mr. Salazar, counsel for Guadalupe Chavez, point out at the board meeting last Wednesday that those two officials that spoke will likely have to recuse themselves.
No more comments. George, continue.
I just have a few more things, and I would like to hear from the other trustees about this. I'm curious if, and Mayor, this is a question for you.
Of course.
I'm curious if a few people said in the public discourse that we as an administration never reached out to Joe to discuss this. Is that?
That's not true, and let me tell you why it's not true. Maida Rubin contacted Mr. Craig to set up a meeting for 9 o'clock this morning.
Oh.
Danielle, yes. And he canceled the meeting.
That's a little late.
Well, I don't know about that. First of all, let me offer this comment. There is no such thing as a lame duck mayor. I'm the mayor till midnight, December 31st. It's that simple, okay? Go ahead, George.
Well, and this all came very quickly. I mean, I got this on Friday, then I got Joe's response and Nancy's, I think, this morning, or actually like tonight. So a lot of this is last minute. But I know that's driven by the resolution, so I get that.
Mayor, Trustee Radnovich, I believe Mr. Craig has met with staff on multiple occasions in the last 2 months. And I think Joshua could confirm that. I also have made 2 or 3 appointments with Trustee-elect Renault and Trustee-elect Kiefer, and they have canceled each of those meetings.
Oh. And that was before this month?
I reached out to them immediately after the election.
If I may, Mayor Trustee Radnovich, yes, staff and myself have met with Mayor-elect Joe Craig. However, as far as I'm concerned, at least, I haven't discussed any of the litigation with Mr. Craig, just to make that clear.
Bear with me because I've got a lot of notes on here. Who does have the jurisdiction to, I mean, I was accused of conflict of interest during the mayoral run and even before. And as far as I was concerned, I didn't have a conflict of interest because I recused myself every time it came up. But people don't believe that. Who does have the jurisdiction and authority to bring someone, an elected official, to try to litigate against an elected official for the from the Governmental Conduct Act, because of the Governmental Conduct Act?
Mayor, Trustee, first of all, this resolution is not an exercise to enforce the Governmental Conduct Act. It's to protect this body, given the guidance of the Ethics Commission. Enforcement of the Governmental Conduct Act is as indicated in the Ethics Commission letter, and that is the governing body of the village may refer a violation of the Governmental Conduct Act to the State Ethics Commission or the district attorney. You also have the power of quo warranto, which is the power to remove a mayor for violations of the Governmental Conduct Act. That's an action that you would take in district court, and some of you may have read a couple years ago that Mayor Bassett in Edgewood was removed in that way. And then Stelzner is actually representing a mayor in the southern part of the state.
So what was that?
It's called quo warranto. It's a state statute that allows the governing body or a member of the governing body to file suit to remove a mayor. So you are not left defenseless if things go awry down the road as a governing body, but in fact, violations of the Governmental Conduct Act are not something you can enforce. That's a State Ethics Commission issue and a district attorney issue. Now, you have your own other set of remedies, and I don't know all of them. I just know about the quo warranto because I've been involved.
That's in effect like a impeachment proceeding or something like that?
Mayor Trustee, that's the closest thing you have to an impeachment proceeding.
So if this passes and Gil becomes the designate, who does Gil answer to? And maybe you know that, Gil, I don't.
Mayor Trustee, the way this is designed, currently the mayor directs us as litigation counsel or general counsel. So Trustee Benavides would be sitting in the shoes of the then mayor, working with litigation counsel and making decisions. He would theoretically request closed sessions with the governing body members that are not conflicted, such that litigation counsel could discuss litigation issues in closed session if necessary. He might also be the point person to present in an open meeting on developments in the litigation, as I do from time to time. But essentially, he would be acting in the shoes of the conflicted mayor.
No, no parallel mayor. There's no such thing, okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the same question of you, Nan. It's not really a parallel mayor. It's purely for the litigation?
Mayor, trustee, correct. This is a section 3-11 or, you know, and 3-1112, 312 municipality, distinct from home rule municipalities, distinct from council manager forms of government. This is a strong mayor form of government. There aren't too many of you. And the list of mayoral obligations in the municipal code goes on for 4 or 5 pages on what those duties are. This is 1/100th of his duties every day, just dealing with this litigation. He's the chief procurement officer. He's the chief HR person. He's the chief executive. He's not administrator. That word was used incorrectly in some of these documents, but he is the executive. And so this appointment to isolate the litigation is only as it concerns the 5 litigations referenced in this resolution.
Which are Palindrome and Chavez Guadalupe.
Mayor, trustee, correct.
Okay, I think I've asked enough for now. I think I may have a couple more. I don't know.
You better ask them, because I'm going to close the floor for comments.
Oh, do you have anything else to say, Sandra? And you, Gil?
No, I'm good, thank you.
So one last question. Is there anything, so this is in a way, so we're trying to protect the village from what the village thinks the new mayor will do when he becomes mayor. Is that because he said things like, I'm going to tear it down, and so forth. So if this passes, this resolution passes tonight, since it's just a resolution, the new mayor could next month or the month after just say, no, I'm striking this down, right? Or could it, with the trustees, come on, guys, with the trustees' approval, is that right?
Mayor, trustee Radnovich, certainly if the new mayor feels like he's not conflicted enough that he can present a resolution that he gets to be involved in the litigation, he can do that. And the trustees can vote to support him on that. That's the prerogative of the next administration.
So hypothetically, one last, maybe just might be more than one, sorry. You know I ask a lot of questions, so I'm sorry. So hypothetically, if this becomes, this resolution passes tonight, and if the Friends of Los Ranchos go through the court process of what's the word? I'm sorry. Of removing Joe's responsibility from the Friends of Los Ranchos. And then 6 months from now, when that happens and the court says, I mean, this is all hypothetical, I know, but if the court says, yeah, you're right, you've done all the things you need to do, if the new mayor were to tear down the project or do something else like that, would he be protected from the Governmental Conduct Act at that point?
Mayor Lopez, trustee Radnovich, there are way too many hypotheticals in there
Okay,
for
okay.
me to really
Thanks
give
for
you
even saying
a
that.
good answer.
Okay, never mind,
Yeah.
never mind. It does, I have to say, it does scare me. And I respect what all of you had to say tonight, but it does scare me. I think that the blame for this, I understand what everybody who spoke is saying. I think this does create dissension and an us and them kind of conflict. But just a second, folks. But I do think that the mayor-elect had a part in that.
There's free speech in campaign, where you can, you're, by the
Yeah.
Constitution, we can have free speech.
We can.
And so that doesn't obligate you in a lawsuit because you use free speech.
Well, it's not a lawsuit for one.
not a lawsuit.
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution, that's all it is.
So that's
It's not a
that's
lawsuit.
quite a difference.
But that's what we're using for scare tactics.
No, it's not a scare tactic at all.
I don't
Go
think
ahead,
it-
George, we need to.
Yeah, I don't
finish
think it
up.
is a scare tactic.
Go ahead, George.
I don't think it's a scare tactic. I think that the current administration is concerned because of that kind of politics speak.
I'm sorry, the floor is closed for, are you ready to close the floor for comments?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you.
I get all that, Gordine, I do. I get all that. I have talked to Joe, not specifically about any of these projects, but I have talked to Joe. Oh. I'm talking about the mayor. Got it.
I'm the mayor. He can call me any time of day or night. He has not. Go ahead.
So I don't think I have any other questions. I think I've asked them all.
Okay, the floor is now closed for comments. I'm going to call for the question, call for the roll call vote. Trustee Pacheco.
Yes.
Trustee Benavides.
Yes.
Trustee Radnovich.
Yeah, boy, this is really a tough one. The fact that, I know there's rhetoric involved, but there's also things that say, I'm gonna do this, and so I'm very worried about that.
This isn't Wild Bill, Joe Craig.
Go ahead, George.
I think I'll vote, I think I'll vote no.
Thank you. Okay, motion carries 2-1. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn the
I
meeting.
need a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The special meeting is now adjourned. The time is 6:12 in the evening. Thank you.
I appreciate if he hasn't reached out to you. You know, if you know,
No, I don't.
We're gonna be putting ourselves in. And I'd like there to be some.
Why is he talking to my son?
You know where I'm going with this?
Yeah. Yes.